The encounter begins with a demand that many people instantly recognize. "Can I see your ID?" At first glance, it sounds routine, but in the UK, the law is far more specific than many people realize. There is no general requirement to carry identification, nor are members of the public required to produce it on demand unless a specific legal power exists. One example is Section 50 of the Police Reform Act, which allows officers to request a person's name and address when they reasonably suspect antisocial behavior. But that wasn't the power being relied upon here. Instead, the PCSO immediately referred to Section 1 of PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. The problem? Section 1 is a stop-and-search power. It allows officers to search someone when there are reasonable grounds to suspect they are carrying stolen property, offensive weapons, burglary tools, fireworks, or other prohibited items. What it does not do is create a blanket power to demand identification. Simply filming in a public place is not grounds for an ID check. Yet that was exactly what appeared to be happening. And when the legal basis was questioned, the confidence behind the demand seemed to disappear just as quickly as it arrived. It's a moment that raises a serious question. Was the law being applied, or merely invoked? The auditor describes it perfectly. Pressure tactics. It's a method that relies less on legal authority and more on public uncertainty. Mention legislation, speak with confidence, and hope the average person assumes the officer must be right. For many people, hearing the words Section 1 of PACE is enough. They don't know what it covers, so they comply without question. But the moment someone actually understands the legislation, the entire dynamic changes. Because Section 1 doesn't provide the powers that were being suggested. And once that becomes clear, the authority behind the claim begins to weaken. This is exactly why legal knowledge matters. If you don't know your rights, you may hand over information you were never required to provide. If you do know your rights, unsupported demands become much easier to challenge. Knowledge isn't about confrontation. It's about confidence. And confidence comes from understanding where authority begins and where it ends. Having failed to justify the demand for identification, the conversation takes another turn. Now the suggestion is trespass. Once again, the legal reality tells a very different story. In England and Wales, ordinary trespass is generally a civil matter, not a criminal offense. Criminal liability only arises in specific circumstances, such as aggravated trespass, where someone intentionally disrupts or obstructs lawful activity. Standing on a public pavement with a camera does not meet that threshold, not even close, which makes the warning difficult to justify from a legal standpoint. Rather than identifying a genuine offense, it appears to function more as a deterrent, a warning designed to encourage compliance where the law itself offers little support. It's a classic example of how legal language can sometimes be used to create pressure, even when the underlying legal basis is weak. A second PCSO soon arrives, and immediately the atmosphere feels different. His tone is calmer, more conversational. Instead of issuing demands, he asks questions. Is the filming for a blog? What's the purpose of the recording? Compared to the earlier interaction, it appears far less confrontational. Yet despite the softer approach, one important issue remains unresolved: accountability. PCSOs do not possess the same powers as police constables. Their authority comes from specific powers designated to them by the chief constable. These powers can vary between forces and often include matters such as issuing fixed penalty notices, seizing alcohol, or dispersing groups. Because those powers are delegated rather than automatic, transparency becomes essential. Home Office guidance states that PCSOs should be able to identify the powers assigned to them, often through a designation card or official record. When asked to produce evidence of those designated powers, this PCSO did not provide one. That may not necessarily amount to a legal breach, but it does create a problem. Public authority depends on public confidence, and confidence is built through transparency. If officers are exercising powers over members of the public, it is entirely reasonable for those powers to be identifiable and open to scrutiny. Without that transparency, trust becomes much harder to maintain. The most revealing moment comes later, when a police constable arrives. Unlike the earlier encounters, there are no exaggerated claims, no legal confusion, no attempts to stretch powers beyond their limits. Instead, the constable explains the situation clearly and accurately. Remain on public land. Film if you wish. Just don't enter private property without permission. Simple, professional, lawful. In less than a minute, he demonstrates what effective policing looks like: clear communication, accurate legal understanding, and respect for the public's rights. The contrast with the earlier interactions could hardly be greater. And that's what makes this incident so important. Because rights only protect people when those rights are understood. Without knowledge, individuals become vulnerable to misinformation, pressure, and unnecessary compliance. With knowledge, they can engage confidently, ask questions, and ensure that authority is exercised properly. This entire encounter took place outside Brighton Police Station, yet the lesson applies everywhere. Know your rights, understand the law, and never be afraid to ask where power comes from. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for the next analysis.